Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Unstructured Unlocked. I'm your host, Chris Wells, VP of R&D at Indico Data, and I'm really excited to be joined today by Munish Arora, Associate Director of Analytics and Robotic Process Automation at Sun Life. Munish, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Chris. I hope to learn something from you and also to contribute here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, same. I hope to learn something from you too. If you could, why don't you tell us a little bit about your career journey, how you ended up in analytics and RPA, and then a little bit about what you're working on these days.
Yeah, so starting with the current organization, as you mentioned, I'm working with Sun Life. So I work on analytics and automation projects. Prior to that, I worked in mainly consulting kind of organizations where I worked on analytics, that includes, say, insights, data engineering, or predictive modeling. And prior to that, if I go back, I started my career as a developer. Got my hands dirty with all different tools, technologies. I still like to do that. And now here I am, responsible for building analytic insights, mining the data, understanding things. Understanding things, what's beneath that, and also to process mine and build automation on top of it.
That's great. How often do you get to get your hands dirty these days?
Usually when people face problems, and we need to fix those problems, then I get into those projects and try to help them. But yeah, other things also keep me busy.
Yeah. Someone has to manage things, I guess, right? That's good. Tell us a little bit about, this podcast is all about centers of excellence, centers of enablement for automation and analytics. Tell us a little bit about your experience and how COEs are sort of set up, how they're structured. What have you seen out there in the marketplace in your career?
Yeah, so COE is, it's a way to embed and implement RPA, deeply and effectively into an organization. That is how I see in COE, because that's a very central part of any organization, and it really helps you to, perform many functions. Say, for example, you want to implement process mining, you want to go deep into that. You would have people from diverse backgrounds. Implementing things, bringing in diverse viewpoints, different technologies. Say you would want to have an infrastructure setup now, which tools to use, which technologies to use, what kind of benefits your automation will bring in. And I guess most importantly, enforcement of even standards that you would want all your teams or all your developers to follow. Say, what kind of a source code, what kind of coding standards, or what kind of design framework you should have. So I guess to enable or to implement those things, the COE plays a very, very important role. Otherwise, it's more like different teams just scattered and then not really able to bring in the actual value to your clients.
Yeah, it can end up being one of those things where a lot of different people own it, and that means nobody actually owns it. So that the center of excellence sort of, stands as the bastion for those things. You mentioned an interesting one, which is this. Actually, there were two things I wanted to point out. You mentioned sort of just standards, and then technology choices. So for those two things, which voices are involved in those conversations as you're making those decisions?
Different set of people, I would say, and I feel, we should get diverse views. So first and foremost, definitely, those technology experts, say architect or designers, belonging, that area, which should at least draft the initial versions. Then we do, say part of kind of in captive organizations, we do interact with external consultants or external vendors also. We would want to know, what our peer groups are doing, what are the standards available in the market, how are we comparative to those standards. So say, in that case, you would interact with different consulting organizations, and then maybe some role, organizations which build those platforms also play a great role in that. So, for example, you would have Blue Prism, you would have Pega, right? So those primary technology companies also have a set of standards which they would want their clients to follow, or they would prefer at least. So I guess we try to take inputs from all these organizations, our own consulting and the product organizations.
Yeah. So that the center of excellence, especially for automation analytics, is a relatively new thing in the world. Really, I would say it's kind of started to crystallize in the last 5 years. How consistent is that advice you're getting from like consultants, vendors, other professionals that you network with? Is it still sort of scattered, or is it starting to sort of centralize around a few things?
No, this is a great point. That how would you trust or how would you go with?
Yeah, I
Right?
didn't want to ask it exactly that way, but yeah. How do you make those decisions?
Yeah, actually, see, we have, as I mentioned earlier, that we have a standard set of tool within organizations. We call them as architecture groups, where our own architects sit there, and then there are divisions like, say, governance
Yep.
bodies. So we take all views, we listen to all, but at the end of the day, we validate, we try to follow more like a prototype model. Say, we would
Okay.
not go and fix some guidelines on everybody. We would test it, we would build some small POCs, prototypes, see how it is working. If those standards make sense, and obviously, say for older technologies, say Java, .NET, where you have that kind of a background, things are already defined.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. So I guess I would summarize that by saying you listen to all and then figure out what works for you and the organization and the people. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's wise counsel. So let's transition a little bit to what it is you can make this specific to you and what your team's working on, or you can make it more general and talk about what it, as an industry, the automation industry, the robotics industry, the analytics industry, what are people working on today, and how is that different from even just a few years ago?
My view is, as the overall industry, as organization, I guess, companies or organization have matured at least by 5 or 10 points in last five years or so. So, say for example, when we started our journey, or I see many organizations, about 4 years or 5 years back, that point in time, people were focused primarily on task automation. Right? You would want to automate specific tasks. You may want to give some tools to your employees for them to run. From that point, I see now organizations are moving towards process automation. Uh, uh, Maybe everybody might have used their low-hanging fruits, and now they are actually focusing more towards end-to-end automation. And in our overall current exposure also, I see more of now AI or problems like unstructured data. Now these are the things which we could not solve in prior years, or I would say we kept it unsolved, and now we're trying to solve those things to make or to automate the complete process from scratch to.
Yeah. Okay. So the low-hanging fruit's gone, so you got to climb up a little bit higher on the tree. I'm gonna come back. I'll circle back to the AI and the unstructured because we want to get to that. But I'm guessing that someone who's going to listen to this podcast is reaching that point where they've just about got all of the low-hanging fruit, and so things are about to change for them in their role leading a COE. What advice would you give to someone who's making that transition from sort of desktop task automation to full-blown process automation?
My advice would be in that case, I would say maybe if you can skip that low-hanging fruit because of availability of new tools of process mining, and right, the technology has advanced.
Mhm.
So if you directly rather focus on end-to-end process understanding and see where are your process inefficiencies are, and then build a solution, right? Because in a longer term, I see those solution will give you better results. It'll improve your client experience. And one more issue it will avoid, that's creation of a technical debt, right?
Yeah,
That's the last thing you would want to do. Create an
yeah,
automation and then scrap and build something new. So if somebody can do that, that's going to be great.
yeah. That's interesting. The advice to not be tempted by the low-hanging fruit and to go right for the stuff that really has high impact is interesting. I haven't heard that advice, but I think there's some wisdom to it. The fact that you have like processes running on someone's desktop that they want to automate sort of tells you that there's something inefficient or broken about the way that you're working, right?
That's
Yeah,
right. That's right. See, the thing is, low-hanging fruits always help you to convince the largest stakeholders to start automation. So I
yeah,
can say that's also play a pivotal role. But in case you have any organization which is quite matured, in case they understand all those technologies, or their COE understand different technologies, tools, toolboxes, things available, maybe they may able to start at a higher level, right? You are increasing the benchmark.
yeah.
So it depends really, at which place that current organization is.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're still trying to prove out the viability of the COE, then pick all the low-hanging fruit. But if you've got a mature organization with big processes to automate, go right for those. That's what you're saying, I think.
Yeah, because nobody
Yeah.
would put his or her money, right?
Yeah.
Like $1 million for you to automate, and you don't know whether that project will be a success or failure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Good. Now I want to give you a chance to just kind of brag a little bit, and you can make this as general and abstract as you want. It can be about something going on now or something in the past, but talk to me about an automation or analytics project that you were involved in or you led that really had an impact on an organization and really forced you to solve some interesting problems.
Okay. Well, I'll not brag. I'll take take a quite practical example. Maybe uh, uh, say talking about maybe insurance sector. So being coming from an insurance landscape, so insurance also, right, it's quite a traditional sector, right?
Yep.
And you would have a lot of papers involved in it. uh, and the best use case anybody would want to have is to have a straight through processing involved,
Yep.
or have uh, have a setup where if you can understand what is coming out from those documents, you would have, say, doctor prescriptions, you would have medical transcripts, you would have say images.
Yep.
Now so there was one project where we actually tried to automate, was on this area itself, wherein we were actually getting a lot of emails. Now an email would tell you that I would want to say if you are in
Yep.
you're inclined for me, right? So, and you would want to have your spouse added in your insurance policy, or you
Yeah.
would want to have some kind of a change. So what simply you would do is you would call a service desk, or you would send them an email. Now, a typical process would take a good amount of time, because your executive will understand those emails. Somebody would need to read it, or a person who is listening on a phone would take a
Mm.
notes or process something. So, a typical organization will have multiple processes or multiple tools in between before it actually reaches to the final point where you would process that
Yep.
request. Not in a typical scenario, this would lead to a poor client experience, or if I would not say poor, maybe not so good, because it takes time. You would have your request completed after 2 years, sorry, 2 days, 3 days, or maybe a week or so. So we try to, understand this, that, okay, where exactly our process inefficiencies were, which tools or technologies which were there in this complete life cycle were actually putting, any value. Do we really need to change our platform, or do we need to, give automation to those executives who are listening to, phone calls, or people, or if we can build something which can read those emails and at least trigger the next process. So, so in this example, we try to put up a multi-point solution, a solution which is given as an attended bots to our, call center folks, which will help them to, navigate all our internal platforms or tools, and trigger an automation. And then automation will help to, file a case, give it to the relevant team to validate the information and then process it. We also try to implement, a text-based solution on the emails which we were getting, right, and classify those emails where you would want to have change in your policies, or say change in your, in your request, and try to automate those things as an unattended, say, bot, because email can come in any time of your day, and you really don't need person just to, scan it. And then there are going to be some emails, or there were some emails which a bot cannot process, so we will give those, exception cases to the actual executive, or the help desk executive to process it. So so this way we really were able to, shorten our time, and our clients were happy, right? Earlier we were turning out the request in many days. Now, it just takes a day or two for us to process it, and then, deliver back the output.
Yeah. Okay. That's a big project. Just going to play back to you a few things I heard. One, you spent time up front trying to understand the full process end to end, right? And I imagine that produced some artifacts, schematics, diagrams, just documentation, right, of what the process is today. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And one thing I can also specify here, in this particular process, there are multiple teams which get involved. It is not really your automation team. You would have, actual your business users, your operations. Many organizations follow that lean, lean consulting. People who comes with, Six Sigma, Black Belt. They are typically good with process understandings. So it's a club of, all those individuals coming together, and at least for the first phase, where you actually try to understand the process. And because it is important that business should be involved at the day one, not really like, okay, I understood, and delivering something at a later stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so get the process documented, and then I think I heard you say, instead of being one massive automation, this is several sort of smaller, some attended automations, some unattended. You're so, surgically putting the automation where it belongs in the process. Is that right?
That's right. And it was also, step by step. It was not really like that we started all this project at the same point, right? So we identified the process, we, figured out where the inefficiencies lies. Then we took the first project only, or, first part of it, build that product also in an agile fashion, iteration by iteration, giving something to business. Once, okay, we have delivered that, let business run that project or run that bot. Or, let them run the attended version first, see how it behaves. Because that build their confidence in us that, okay, the clients, the actual agents, they are liking the product, they are liking the bot. Because there's one challenge which I typically see happen with many organizations or many teams, is that it's a challenge related to adaptability. You build fancy organizations, right, then people don't want to use it.
Yeah.
So and it safeguards us as well, right? So let them build, let them use it. Once they have used it, so when they once they have used it for a while, they liked it, and then we go towards the second part of inefficiency and try to fix that. But we have definitely a big picture in our mind when we start doing that. Okay, how different pieces will tie together once the complete project will end.
Great. You mentioned a point which I always love to emphasize, which is you're asking people, this is an analogy, right? You're asking people to go from their 15-year-old Honda Civic to a fully self-driving electric car. Maybe let them get behind the wheel first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It change is hard. Change is hard, and it's hard for I think all humans, but especially business process change is difficult. So let me ask you this then. You talked about the clients were much happier, and you talked about the business was involved from the beginning. Super important. The agents and the account executives that are actually working on these cases that come through, after you go through the process and you sort of give them a chance to step into it and get used to it, what happened with their sort of job satisfaction? What were the reviews from the people that are now doing the work with the help of the robots?
Uh, I would go back to your point which you mentioned. So it takes time for change, for people to adapt the change.
Yeah.
So there is a good effort which is involved first, for training those folks, right? You will have an apprehension. But one thing which really helped us in this stuff was, our way of working, or I would say, that agile way of working.
Yeah.
Because when you build prototypes, business would see few things, or at least something at each stage, right? They will have something to test at every 2 weeks or every week, when we're going to give them products. So by following this, we have seen very, very less apprehensions, or, a surprise factor in terms of business eyes that, oh, what exactly you have built. So, because they have seen it, they have tested it. At least I would not say if complete business, but say if you have 100 users, you would have at least 10 users part of that journey. Now those 10 users who have tested your product for say previous 3 months, every single day, every third day, every few weeks, then those 10 individuals will become your brand ambassadors.
Yes.
Right, to convince your 90 users that you need to use it. So I think that strategy of using a pilot users involved with while you're building your stuff, while you're building your automations, and then they will drive your adaptability.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's a lot of conversation out there on LinkedIn and elsewhere about automation, and I think we often forget that people they're still involved, and they're going to be involved. And that process you identified right there of taking 10 sort of laboratory test subject and turning them into people that are going to talk about the good news to the rest of the organizations, that this can make the job better and it can make the client experience better. That's just absolutely critical, and it's a great process to build into your COE.
And I see as such also the users will also get an opportunity to work on most complex tasks, right? So they also get to avoid those very simple tasks which they were used to do, right? So it's a win-win situation for everybody.
Yeah. If you spend your whole day doing mindless stuff, right, you only have so much mental energy, and that would be better spent on the stuff that you need human mental energy for. Right? Good. Well, you brought it up a little while ago, and I'm going to circle back to it now. So let's talk a little bit about unstructured data. And not everyone here, listening has tried to tackle unstructured data in the past. So why don't we start? I'll just ask you, what does unstructured data mean to you?
Unstructured data I see everywhere, right? For me, it's very simple, right? All images, videos, voice, social media footprints, chats, voice transcripts, right? Everything, right? Everything which is probably not in a relational format, those typical RDBMS definition. Everything is right unstructured.
Yeah, everything is unstructured, basically. If it's anything interesting, I mean, the use case you mentioned, right, was email, right, which is maybe in a lot of ways the most unstructured, because people can put whatever they want into an email body. And I like the framing. Basically, if it can't fit into a relational database, then it's probably unstructured. That's a nice heuristic for people to carry around in their heads. You talked a little bit about your experience with unstructured in one particular use case. Do you see that? Do you see unstructured as sort of the next big horizon for the automation center of excellence or the analytics center of excellence, or is it still early days?
No, absolutely. I think the time has come. Business really want to have end-to-end automations, and I'm very sure, when anybody or any organization, be it you pick up any industry, you're going to try to automate end-to-end process. You will going to get unstructured data in between, be it will be images or voice, right? Some other the way you will face that, and if you really want to enhance your client experience, you would need to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So the time has come. I don't, I don't see that as a futuristic thing.
Yeah.
It's very much in present.
All right, you heard it here, folks. The time has come for unstructured data automation. Munish Arora.
Yeah.
Good. I think you're right. Back to your comments about low-hanging fruit and seeing the whole process and trying to automate the whole process. There are very few processes which drive business value that don't have some form of unstructured data somewhere along the way as a key component. So thinking back to the early days where you were just doing sort of task automation, robotically clicking through web forms or filling out data, thinking of that, which is, at this point, the very simple stuff, what are the unique challenges that present themselves when you're trying to automate a process that involves unstructured data?
See, the biggest challenge which I see as of this date is of accuracy. Now, if I compare that challenge with a challenge 4 years back, that point in time, it was maybe unavailability of right tools and technologies, or organizations who can solve those challenges. So accuracy is a major issue, right? If you really would not want to have your process automated by some technology which will give you, say, accuracy of 50%, 60%, right? Because in that case you would spend good amount of time in processing the other part, and then you may need good amount of time to validate what has been processed earlier. So accuracy is the main thing. But yes, as I said earlier, it was a case you had very few organizations, or say boutique players like your organization, which specifically work on this particular problem statement. So I don't remember, many organizations trying to solve unstructured data problems, say 6 years back or 8 years back. So luckily, now we have, I think, good amount of technologies available, and different organizations available. So
yeah,
probably we want to solve that.
Yeah, interesting point. 6 or 8 years ago, the organizations solving unstructured were, they were really the big research labs at Google and Facebook and wherever else, right? And now those technologies, at least a generation back, have been open sourced, and there are lots of products built on top of them. So the tools are no longer the excuse, I guess. Circling back to that conversation about accuracy, that's one that we have that conversation a lot, obviously, as anyone working with unstructured data does. So I want to frame it this way. The end-to-end process, before, document comes in and eventually key details have to end up in a database. That end-to-end process, you really need to be 100% accurate, right? So how do you decide, how do you set the benchmark for the tools in between that are taking part of that job? You said 50 to 60% is not enough. Does it have to be 99? How do you decide where to stop in terms of accuracy to get enough value out of something like that?
Well, to this one, I would not say 99%. I think that'll be too insane to ask for. I would put things above, say, 85%, 85 to 90, 92. I think that's a good number to have. And then that, I would say, it also depends on a use case to use case. What kind of use case we have? If you want to have say if I give an example of medical transcript, right? You will have medical transcriptions, right? Medicines written over it, versus where you would have a claim amount written on your right receipt. So you may manage with the first one, bit of a lower accuracy, but you would want to have a very high accuracy in the later stage, where you're processing, say, your claims. Then versus if I change the use case to, say, social media for some different industry, where you are mining data from social media platform, then you even would have a challenge first. Accuracy is a different matter, but you would even have a challenge that what exactly you would want to have, or what exactly you would even want to store. And then you have different challenges like PIA, right?
Yeah.
And those sensitive things are there. So I think that's what drives the use case, or the technologies we would want to pick up.
Yeah, absolutely. On a related note, have you seen use cases where the automation, whatever it's built out of, AI, rules, whatever, where it gets to 99% accuracy, but it's still so business critical that you're always going to have a pair of human eyes reviewing before it goes to a downstream process?
Yes, at least in my experience, I always seen at least some pair of human eyes, at least, if not say 100% of the cases, but either as a random samples, right, where you would randomly validate few cases. Okay, whether we are measuring, so it's about calculating your false positive or your false negatives, where exactly you're trending. So then you would have a trade-off between which will exactly lead to losses, or which will exactly lead to, say, poor client experience, and then you will take your call.
Yeah, excellent point. I repeatedly tell I tell anyone that will listen, but a lot of our clients, like, accuracy in and of itself isn't very meaningful because it doesn't have any units. You can't convert it to dollars or time saved. But that distinction you just made between, are we willing to live with false positives, which create one kind of work for us, or false negatives, which create a different kind of work or risk? That nuance is really important, and I hope everyone listening writes that down, because that's where you really decide, like, is the process working or not? That's great. I appreciate that a lot. Good. So we've talked about what unstructured is, what some of the challenges are. You made the point earlier that basically everything is unstructured data. So given all of the things that you could be working on in the unstructured space, how do you decide which projects are the right ones to take on at a given moment?
Well, that is driven through one of the major thing will be client experience.
Okay.
We should pick up the channel which would have maximum impact on client experience. Say I may want to pick up things related to voice first, comparative to
Interesting.
text,
Okay.
because somebody is listening to you and it's he or she is on the call. I may want to solve that problem first. Then there are secondary cases where I would say, first is the process maturity, where exactly that particular problem fits in, whether by solving that particular issue, will my complete process will be automated, because that will also improve my client experience. And third, I may want to look at my profitability also, versus my cost in building that. What will be my payback period? I don't really prefer to pick up, a 3-year or 5-year project, and with a payback of again or another 3 years. I may want to have a process which is cheaper to build, faster to build, and can give ROI in a shorter time frame. So that use case I pick.
Yeah. All the chief financial officers listening out there just cheered, looking for that sub 1 year payback for anything. Yeah. I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier, which is, you talked about listening to a lot of voices and deciding which tools and practices. When it comes specifically to unstructured, as you're talking to consulting firms and peers and vendors out there, how do you feel the maturity is in terms of best practice, tooling, and the advice that you're getting in the unstructured space?
I see that's nearly at a starting level. I would not say at a mature level. The advice which we get towards on a structured automation or process mining, process automation, that is quite matured. But this I may say early to mid level, and yeah, and I don't blame them because the way things are moving, the way data is changing, right? So I think people may take some time to standardize that.
Yeah, absolutely. What are the specific areas where you would say there's the most friction or the most noise in terms of working with unstructured data right now?
Maybe images.
Okay.
I think that's a most difficult area, at least which I have seen up till now, because of there is a lot of ambiguity the way you would write or I would write English language, and specifically for organizations which operate in different geographies other than say North America, be it Europe or the Pacific. You would have regional regional languages. So that's, I think, it's a difficult nut. Maybe a lot of organizations are trying to solve that. I expect that is what maybe Google or Microsoft of the world might be processing or training their engines.
Yeah.
All that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
but I want to
so
know, what's your experience on this one?
My experience on this one. Wow, that's a power move right there, taking over the interviewer's chair. I love it. My experience is that so here's what I've seen in my journey the last 5 or 10 years working in the enterprise. So RPA comes onto the scene, right? And RPA is very successful, grows extremely rapidly in the last decade, and sort of dominates the marketplace. And so you can get to straight through processing on some of that task automation, and you can get to really high accuracies on task automation. And that has led to the market being saturated by, people talking about, 99% or 100% accurate. And by the way, you can do it with your documents too, or your images or your audio. And the truth is, here's where I think the market lacks maturity. Those processes with unstructured data, they require intelligence. That's why we have human beings doing them today. Because when you look at a document and I look at a document, the same data field might occur in 5 different spots, but one of them's the right one, or maybe 2 of them are actually the right one, and you and I are going to pick different ones, right? And that noise in the intelligence is an inherent, it's an inherent obstacle to straight through processing. So having the maturity to realize that your humans are central to the process today, and they're going to stay central to the process tomorrow, but they're going to get a lot of help from the AI and not just the AI, but like good tools for them to work with that weren't, written as a console application in 2005, right? So maturity in terms of tooling, maturity in terms of understanding that like your process has inherent ambiguity in it, and ultimately accuracy is not the number that drives your return on investment. It's really how efficient and effective are your human workers, because they're, despite Tesla's claims that we're going to all be riding around like the Jetsons, we're not there yet, and we're not going to be for a while. So that's where I see a lack of maturity, is just understanding what the tools can do and thinking about them in the right way, as a partnership with your human knowledge workers.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Yeah. So that's my 2 cents. Now, something we haven't talked about is And actually, again, it's a good segue from task automation to process automation. You automate it, right? You automate something, and like that email case you talked about, it had, bunch of bots, bunch of new tech that creates organizational overhead. There has to be oversight of those things. So given that, when it comes to unstructured data and automating processes that involve unstructured data, what are the unique sort of costs or process controls or governance checks that you have to put in place to manage something like that involves unstructured data?
Depends on, again, on the use case to use case, or which kind of unstructured data we are trying to mine. Things which are coming to us, or things which are coming to us through traditional routes, as I said, medical transcripts, or people calling us and asking for help. There we have more control on who can see the data, how we can process that, because you would have a standard pipeline. But if I compare that with somebody reaching out to you on Twitter, somebody is commenting you on Facebook, right? There you would need to have strong controls that how who or how you can process, or who can see that data. So there is very strong guidelines defined by the organizations. At least I see that in majority of organizations, right, where they have a governing council, they have a security council in place, where before you can actually mine or you can process a data, you would need to go to those councils and put your use case that this is the data which we are getting. How we're going to process it, how we're going to say anonymize, how I'm going to handle my PII information. And then there are standards defined for that you need to follow. And and then there are different country specific rules, different geography specific rules, which you need to follow. So I think that's a big work, and at least in my experience, I've seen specific councils take that. But yes, I see there is one challenge in their work also, because you would have a new set of data, or new set of use case coming in every few days. So they also need to adapt. So that is where, as a COEs, we also try to help them. When we try to explain our business cases, that this is what we are getting, and this is how we're going to store it. And these are the controls. So then we take it forward.
Yeah, the sort of data and security council framework I really like. I hadn't heard that one before. That's really interesting. Do you, as you're trying to build out cases to take to these councils, do you find yourself, how do I ask this question? One of the tricky parts about unstructured data is you don't know what's in it until you actually look at it, right? And so do you find yourself building out a lot of tools to do analytics on unstructured data to help make that business case? Or do you find do you have to build that new every time you're faced with a new data set?
Again, I would go back to the model of POCs here.
Okay.
Right, you would take some part of data. Obviously, you would have some human, right, who would see that data, who will process, but definitely you would only give that opportunity or permission to those individuals who have right to watch that. So if you have any geography boundaries, or you have any other kind of boundaries, so you would definitely first subset those kind of individual which can at least process it, or get that data. And then as a second point, you would give that raw data also to your councils, and right, that this is what we have sourced out, and then a kind of a pilot on it to take it to that council, because I think that's a duty of a COE also, to help those security council members to understand how we are getting that data, how we're going to process it, because they don't know, right?
Yeah.
Right. Someday, say if an upcoming use case, you may mine something or bring data out of a blockchain. Now you really don't have any controls over that, right? On
Yeah.
that technology, not
Yeah.
even defined, right? So I think they're also, going back to the old point of how COE contributes. So COE also contributes in, uh, bringing that education or bringing that maturity
Yeah.
to different, stakeholders like this governing councils, and then, they approve or deny your cases.
Yeah. I like that partnership. So the security and the compliance, they want to know, are these things in here which are risky for us, right? And so the COE's role is to really expose those things and bring best practice to working with data like that, so that question could get answered. I like that partnership a lot. Let's see, we're coming up on the bottom of the hour, so I want to switch to looking towards the future. You talked a little bit already about the challenges for today. Now is the time to pounce on unstructured data. What do you if we do this podcast again in a couple of years, what challenge do you think we'll be facing as like the next big challenge a few years from now?
That's a good question. What kind of challenges will be facing?
And that counts as an invite to come back to the podcast in a couple of years too. So
I would love to come back. I see maybe we should be able to solve our basics of unstructured data problem. I could say we could have, or maybe I can say we will be able to solve problems in silos.
okay.
Say solving maybe a voice problem, solving a text problem. But we may lack in solving my end-to-end, end-to-end journey, because there is one issue which I see now and which may still be present in the future is what to do with the existing technology landscape in mature organization or old organizations. I see startups, smaller organizations which are just new to any sector. They may be far ahead in the curve. They might solve things related to they may start working on blockchain or maybe newer stuff. Maybe elevating client experience through metaverse. Giving that AI or VR flavor, because that will increase your or improve your client experience to very high level. But I see maybe organization or mature organizations or older organization may need to fix all those old technologies from from their bucket before they can latch those things. So I think different organizations will be at a different place uh, at a future year.
Well, that's interesting. I think what you're saying is, because it's kind of a fragmented space in terms of technology and vendors and consultants, that in the future we might have accumulated quite a bit of tech debt as we've brought in a bunch of different tools and a bunch of different homemade processes to solve problems in silos. So piggybacking on that, are you thinking that now is a good time to try to start building solutions that aren't siloed in the unstructured space, or is it too soon?
No, I think we should start,
okay.
Because, as I said earlier, because we have those technologies in place, right? We have organizations like yours organization here, right? So we have, I see, the talent is available. There are a lot of work has been done by companies like, right, Microsoft, AWS. You have connectors available. Then there is a lot of interest in academics as well, right? Where people are trying to solve this. And also, as you mentioned, right, we have already solved the problem of typical structured stuff, and if we really need to bring value to the business, so we need to solve that. So,
Yeah.
and even, and you rightly mentioned, right, in order to avoid that technical debt, which will come after a few years, it's better to spend maybe more time and, solve things, at least, organizations which are a bit mature, who have already, used their low hanging fruits, who start the journey now on unstructured.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Start the journey towards maturity and unstructured today. I love it. This should be marketing for Indico, honestly. All right. So two more questions. One, and these ones are a little bit more controversial. There's data out there that suggests that something like as little as 1 in 5 to as bad as like 1 in 10 AI or automation initiatives are successful. So maybe 20%, probably more like 10%. Why do you think those initiatives fail in the enterprise?
Maybe we expect a lot, or maybe we make those initiatives very costly to fail. I believe we should, try. We should fail fast and fail cheap.
Okay.
I don't think you can ever build a solution or ever build a platform which will be 100% perfect. It's not humanly possible. So it is better, you fail fast, you learn your mistakes, and then, move to a different, different solution. So rather than, I would not want to make that, very blanket statement which people make that, 1 out of 10 is unsuccessful, so stop doing it. Right, because in that case you will stop innovating, right? You will always go with a safer route. But I will not do it. I'll go on a safe path.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking with someone the other day about the James Webb telescope that was just launched a little while back, and something like 350 individual points of failure, which they all had to go right for this thing to get to space. And we were talking about, why can't enterprise automation follow this path? And I was, their budget was like $5 billion. That's why. If you have $5 billion and the best engineers in the world, you ought to be able to do it. But we have to make do with a little less in the enterprise, I guess. Last question for the new COE leader out there, and then same question for the mature COE leader out there that's listening. Best piece of advice you could give to those two personalities?
Always involve business with you while you try to solve a problem. Don't try to solve a problem in the silos. I think the more feedback you will get, the more folks you will interact with, the more folks you will tell your solution, your options. They're going to like it, and they will give you brilliant suggestions. Right, that's what I feel. That's common for any for every CEO center of excellence. And second, I would say we discussed that point, right? That we should see end-to-end process, including both structured and unstructured. You may able to build a better solution with very less technical debt.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Munish, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope we get to talk again in a few years about the next stage of the future.
Oh, absolutely. It was pleasure, interacting with you, Chris. As I said, I also learned a lot from you.
Same. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of Unstructured Unlocked. My guest today has been Munish Arora, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Enjoy all the automation out there, Munish. We'll see you again down the road.
Thank you.